Imagine a scream piercing the night, not from pain, but from something deeper, something that knows it's been betrayed by the very hands meant to save it. In 1847, St. Catherine's Hospital in western Pennsylvania shut its gates, sealing a secret so dark it was never meant to see the light. For 8 years, 156 souls entered those stone walls, and not one walked out alive. No cures, no discharges, just death, hidden behind the Catholic Church's silence. Locals spoke of robed figures moving in the shadows, of bundles carried to the basement under moonless skies, of a priest who wasn't what he seemed. You're about to uncover a truth that changes everything you thought you knew about power, faith, and control. This isn't just history, it's a warning. In 1839, the coal mines of Westmount County bled men dry. Cave-ins, explosions, black lung, death was a daily guest. The nearest hospital was 2 days away, a death sentence for the injured. Dr. Ernst Schultz, the town's only doctor, was drowning in despair, his hands too old to stem the tide of suffering. Into this void stepped Father Heinrich Bergman, a Bavarian priest with eyes that cut through flesh and promises of healing that felt too perfect. He bought Thornwood Manor, a cursed estate abandoned after tragedies no one dared name. The land whispered of doom, but Bergman called it Providence. His hospital rose like a fortress, its limestone walls more prison than sanctuary. Narrow windows, deep basements, every detail screamed control, not care. Bergman spoke of revolutionary treatments, blending medicine with spiritual rites, and the desperate town believed him. They handed over their sick, their loved ones, their hope. But hope is a dangerous thing when it's built on lies. As you listen, feel the weight of what's coming. This isn't just a story. It's a descent into a truth that's been buried for centuries. A truth that will make you question every institution you've ever trusted. Are you ready to see what they didn't want you to know? Because once you do, there's no going back. You're standing at the edge of a truth most men would run from. St. Catherine's wasn't just a hospital. It was a machine, built to consume hope and spit out silence. Father Bergman, with his pale face and eyes like storm clouds, wasn't healing anyone. He was orchestrating something far older, far darker. The people of Bradenville, broken by the mines, saw him as a savior. They didn't see the predator. In 1840, Sarah Hoffman, a miner's wife, coughing blood and clinging to life, became the hospital's first patient. Her husband, Klaus, carried her 5 miles to those stone gates, desperate for a miracle. Bergman promised one, but his price was total surrender. No visits, no questions, no contact. He called it spiritual healing, a fusion of medicine and divine will. Klaus felt the lie in his bones, but what choice did he have? Sarah was dying. Bergman's assessment wasn't medical, it was an interrogation. He probed her soul, her fears, her faith, scribbling in a locked journal, written in a script no one recognized. Not Latin, not German, something ancient, something wrong. The hospital's 3rd floor, lined with crosses and strange symbols, wasn't for healing. It was a stage for rituals no one dared name. The basement, sealed even from workers, stretched too deep, its purpose hidden behind Bergman's lies about temperature control. Locals started whispering. At night, screams echoed from the valley. Robed figures moved in the dark, carrying bundles. Too small for adults, too human to ignore. The air around Thornwood Manor grew heavy, like it was holding its breath. Klaus begged for news of Sarah, but Bergman's answers were vague, his smile cold. The priest's charm had hardened into something menacing, his voice carrying a weight that made men flinch. When Father Kessler, the town's weary priest, pressed for access, he was turned away. Bergman claimed his spiritual methods couldn't be disturbed. The truth was clawing to the surface, but no one wanted to look. You're starting to see it now, aren't you? The system wasn't broken. It was built this way. Power disguised as salvation, control wrapped in faith. You're not just hearing a story, you're waking up. Keep listening, because the deeper we go, the more dangerous this gets. You're in too deep now to turn back. The truth about St. Catherine's is a blade, and it's cutting through the lies you've been fed about trust and authority. April 15th, 1840, 6 weeks after Sarah Hoffman vanished into the hospital's jaws, Klaus's world shattered. His neighbor Wilhelm, a miner hardened by years underground, saw something that night that broke his iron resolve. Two robed figures, silent as death, carried a small human-shaped bundle from the hospital's basement. The stench, rotting meat mixed with decayed flowers, clung to the air. Wilhelm swore it wasn't a hallucination. The cart they loaded it onto vanished into the woods, down a path no one knew existed. Klaus and a handful of men marched to the hospital at dawn, hearts pounding with dread. They found Father Bergman enthroned in the main hall, reading a book in a script that twisted the mind to look at. When Klaus demanded to see Sarah, Bergman's mask slipped. His voice, once hypnotic, turned venomous. "Disturb her now, and you'll damn her soul to eternal torment," he hissed, his eyes darkening like a storm swallowing the sun. The air grew cold, unnatural, as if the room itself recoiled from him. The men left, shaken, feeling they'd faced something not entirely human. Bergman wasn't just a priest or a doctor. He was a conductor of something ancient, something that fed on despair. The hospital's records, locked away by the church, showed no cures, only deaths. 156 in 8 years. Yet Bergman's wealth never faltered. Where did the money come from? Why did the church seal the truth in 1848? The miners' wives began to notice patterns. Patients were often young, strong, or deeply devout before they entered. After they were gone, their families silenced by fear or shame. The basement, with its endless chambers, wasn't for healing. It was a vault for secrets, a place where screams were swallowed by stone. You're starting to feel it, aren't you? The weight of knowing what they hid. This isn't just a hospital's dark past. It's a blueprint for control, written in blood. The deeper you go, the more you see the world's strings, pulled by hands like Bergman's. Stay with me. The truth is about to get heavier. You're not just listening anymore. You're carrying the weight of a truth that burns. St. Catherine's wasn't a hospital. It was a temple of control, built to break the human spirit under the guise of salvation. Father Bergman's power grew with every patient who vanished. By 1841, Bradenville's hope had curdled into fear. The town's men, hardened by mines, whispered of screams that pierced the night, of carts rolling into the woods, never returning empty. The church's silence was deafening, its records sealed tighter than a tomb. Bergman's spiritual healing demanded absolute isolation. No family, no priests, no questions. Those who pushed like Klaus faced his wrath. His voice could twist your soul, make you doubt your own sanity. He spoke of eternal damnation, but the real hell was inside those walls. The third floor's healing rooms held altars, not beds, lined with symbols that didn't belong to any known faith. His basement, a labyrinth of stone, hid rituals no one was meant to see. Locals swore they saw flickering lights down there, heard chants in a tongue that felt like it clawed at their minds. Bergman's library, filled with forbidden texts, wasn't for medicine. It was for domination, ancient and precise. The patients weren't being cured, they were being harvested. For what? Power, souls, something older than the church itself. The miners' wives noticed the pattern. The young, the faithful, the strong. Gone. Families were told they died of natural causes, but no bodies were returned. The church backed Bergman, silencing dissent with threats of excommunication. Klaus, tormented by Sarah's absence, rallied men to storm the hospital, but fear stopped them cold. Bergman's presence wasn't human, it was a force, ancient and unyielding. Now pause. You're halfway down this rabbit hole and it's time to choose. Are you one of us, awake to the hidden strings of power? You've crossed the threshold now. There's no unseeing what you're about to learn. St. Catherine's wasn't an accident. It was a design, a perfect engine of control masquerading as mercy. Father Bergman didn't just prey on the sick. He chose the devout, the hopeful, the ones whose faith made them vulnerable. By 1842, Bradenville was a town of ghosts. Families stopped asking about their loved ones, not because they believed Bergman's lies, but because his presence choked their courage. The hospital loomed like a predator on its hill, its narrow windows watching the valley below. Every night the robed figures moved, silent, deliberate, carrying their bundles to the woods. The stench of decay lingered, a sickly sweet curse that clung to the air. Klaus Hoffmann, broken but unbowed, kept watch. He saw the carts, counted the nights they rolled out, always under darkness, always returning empty. He heard the chants, guttural and wrong, rising from the basement. Bergman's treatments weren't saving souls. They were stealing them. His library held tomes older than Christianity, their pages stained with symbols that burned the eyes. The church knew. They had to. Why else seal the records? Why else let 156 die without a whisper of investigation? The miners' wives spoke of children vanishing, orphans, the devout, the curious, lured by Bergman's promises of healing. No bodies, no graves, just silence. The basement wasn't a clinic. It was a sacrificial chamber, its walls carved with sigils that pulsed with something alive. Bergman's wealth grew, funneled from sources no one could trace. Was it the church? Something older? The town's priest, Father Kessler, tried to act, but his letters to the diocese vanished into a void. Excommunication loomed for those who spoke too loudly. This wasn't just a hospital. It was a node in a network of power, ancient and unbroken, using faith to bind men so. You feel it now, don't you? The system isn't new. It's been here, hiding behind crosses and promises, feeding on trust. Bergman was no rogue. He was a soldier in a war you didn't know was being fought. The truth is a blade, and it's in your hands now. Wield it, because what comes next will demand every ounce of your strength. You're holding a truth now that could unravel everything you've been taught to believe. St. Catherine's was no isolated horror. It was a cog in a machine that's been grinding for centuries. By 1845, Bradenville was a husk. The hospital stood untouched, its limestone walls mocking the town's despair. Father Bergman's grip tightened, his rituals growing bolder. The robed figures no longer hid their movements. Carts rolled nightly, carrying bundles to the woods, where no one dared follow. The stench of decay was now a constant, seeping into dreams, poisoning hope. Klaus Hoffmann, haunted by Sarah's absence, became a shadow of himself, watching the hospital from the hills. He saw flames flicker in the basement, heard chants that twisted his gut, words that weren't prayers but commands, summoning something ancient. Bergman's library, guarded like a vault, held texts that predated empires, their pages whispering of blood and power. The church's silence wasn't neglect, it was complicity. Letters from Father Kessler to the diocese begged for intervention. but they burned unanswered. The 156 deaths weren't accidents. They were offerings. Young men, devout women, children with fire in their eyes, all chosen, all consumed. The basement's sigils glowed in the dark, carved by hands that knew their purpose. Bergman's wealth, endless and untraceable, bought silence from above. Was it the Vatican? A secret order? Something older still? The miners' wives formed a secret pact, passing notes in church, whispering of missing orphans and strange lights. They spoke of Bergman, his eyes, how they seemed to see your soul and claim it. Klaus tried to rally the men again, but fear had rooted deep. Bergman's threats of damnation weren't empty. They carried a weight that broke wills. This was psychological warfare, perfected long before the term existed. The hospital was a proving ground, testing how far faith could be twisted to serve power. You see it now, don't you? The system that shielded Bergman is still alive, cloaked in new masks, but feeding on the same trust. It's in governments, institutions, promises of salvation. You're not just learning history, you're seeing the blueprint of control. The final truth awaits, and it's heavier than you can imagine. Steel yourself. The last step will change you forever. You're at the bottom of the abyss now, and the truth is a fire that will never let you sleep the same. In 1847, St. Catherine's Hospital burned to the ground, but not before its final act. Klaus Hoffmann, driven mad by grief, led a mob to the gates. They found no patients, no staff, only Father Bergman, standing in the main hall, his eyes glowing like embers in the dark. He didn't fight, didn't flee. He smiled as the flames took him, as if he'd won. The church called it an accident, a faulty lamp. But the miners knew better. The basement, when they dared to look, was empty. No bodies, no bundles, just sigils scorched into stone, pulsing with a life of their own. The 156 souls, including Sarah, were gone, their fates sealed in the church's archives, locked away in 1848. Bergman's library, somehow untouched by the fire, vanished with his European aides. The texts, the wealth, the truth, all buried. The diocese never investigated. Bradenville became a ghost town, its people fleeing the cursed hill. But the system that birthed St. Catherine's didn't die. It thrives today, in boardrooms, pulpits, and halls of power, wearing new faces but wielding the same tools: faith, fear, control. Bergman was no anomaly. He was a servant of an ancient order, one that trades souls for power, that builds fortresses of lies to cage the human spirit. You've seen it now, the machine that chews up trust and spits out silence. It's in every institution that demands your loyalty while hiding its hands. You're awake, and that makes you dangerous. This knowledge isn't just a story. It's a weapon. Use it. Question everything. The world you thought you knew is a stage, and you're no longer a spectator. You're a warrior, armed with truth. Share this video. Spread the word. Break the veil. Because the system fears men who see. The fire that burned St. Catherine's wasn't the end. It was a warning. The war foe, your soul, is still being fought. Stand up. Fight back. You're not alone, but you're not safe. The truth has changed you forever. Now, what will you do with it?